If you would like to change your name, you can go ahead and do so. And without further ado, I leave it to you.
Okay, I will turn it over to my partner.
Okay, thank you so much. So yes, my name is Alan Davis. I'm coming to you today from Singapore.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning. And I'm Yoshie Ochi of Matsuyama University.
I'm Eleanor Carson from Matsuyama University as well.
We are very happy to be here today. So, well, our focus today is to clarify the roles that learner autonomy, self-efficacy, and medium of instruction play on student willingness to communicate in English. Okay, here's the outline of our presentation today. And we are going to talk about background, method, result, discussion, and lastly, an implication for theory and pedagogy. Now, the background. So we have a problem. The problem is that Japanese EFL students often lack willingness to communicate in their second language. Why? The reason is that they have low level of self-efficacy and sense of their competence in the second language. Often they are unaware of their possibility of their own learner autonomy and afraid to use English because of lack of understanding. So as a result, we face classrooms with silent students and who have low motivation. Why is this problem so important? So we hope to find if learner autonomy and self-efficacy and medium of instruction correlated with willingness to communicate. And it means that helping the student to build their learner autonomy, self-efficacy, and comprehension could help them to increase their willingness to communicate and help students learn English. Now, we'll outline the context, our research. And we need to get students talking, and talking is important for language learning. And first, and please look at green box in the middle. And research on willingness to communicate in foreign language was developed by McCloskey and Bear. And Matsuoka found that self-efficacy might be slow to change, and 5 variables relating to language anxiety could be modified by teachers in class. So based on her findings, it was possible that comprehension support using Japanese and student autonomy and self-efficacy might influence student willingness to communicate. And next, please look at the blue box in the bottom right corner. And this is about the medium of instruction or the language of instruction used to teach English in class. So Carson found that a student with low English proficiency usually prefers most Japanese support and are usually anxious in English class. So an efficient use of Japanese support as needed might enable students to feel less anxious, more confident, and more willing to communicate in English in class. And now, please look at the dark green box at the top. And the self-efficacy beliefs, or the sense that they can do it, are necessary for language acquisition. So Bandura found that students with good academic self-efficacy use good learning strategies, are willing to work harder in class and persistent despite obstacles. And Ochi found that drawing student attention to their self-efficacy using self-assessment report can help students to assess, alter their beliefs, and their language learning habit. And finally, please look at the purple box in the bottom left corner. And this is about learner autonomy, and which is the sense that the student can control their learning. So learner autonomy is a difficult concept to measure, but Murase used the factor analysis and to quantitatively assess 4 major constructs and clarify the learner construct that matter to EFL students in Japan. And Skyke and found that learner autonomy skills can be taught to students in self-access support system. And Benson found that self-assessment was linked to autonomy. So we think that student willingness to communicate in class is influenced by their preference for Japanese support of comprehension, their self-efficiency in class, and their own learner autonomy outside of class. So there is a purpose of this research. So purpose is to study the influence of learner autonomy and the preference of Japanese support and self-efficacy on learners' willingness to communicate. Now we consider 3 research questions. And first, does learner autonomy contribute to willingness to communicate? And the second, does self-efficacy contribute to willingness to communicate? And do preferences for medium of instruction influence their willingness to communicate? Now, and we are using a specialized term in this research. So please take a moment to review the meaning of willingness to communicate, learner autonomy, self-efficacy, and medium of instruction. Next, and we will describe the method. The participants were 100 EFL students at a private university in Western Japan, and they had JTE or NEST teacher. Participation in this study was voluntary, confidential, and unrelated to grades. And of the 100 participants, 34 were taught by the Japanese teacher of English, and 66 were taught by the native English-speaking teacher. And there are 48 males and 52 females. And their general English proficiency level varied from basic to upper intermediate according to their TOEIC scores. Next. And we conducted student survey at 3 times. First at the beginning, second in the middle, and finally at the end of the term. In addition, and the student completed self-evaluation worksheet every class of their 15-week term. And this was an important part of raising student awareness of their learning autonomy in order to build their self-efficacy. So the questionnaires and the learner autonomy, 12 questionnaires were selected from the questionnaire developed by Printridge and DeGood, and 8 self-efficacy questionnaires were selected by questionnaire developed by Pinch and DeGood, and the learner autonomy was adapted by Murase's mirror questionnaires. And the student preference for instructional language scale was used to assess student attitude toward the use of Japanese. And the willingness to communicate scale is a complete scale as developed by McCloskey and Bear. All questions were translated to Japanese, and so the student can easily understand. And responses to all questionnaires were found to be highly reliable. So all survey data was analyzed for this. And the second, I developed self-evaluation worksheet. So here is the self-evaluation worksheet. And at the beginning, and the learners set their goals for weekly study. And this is an example. And from the example from the left side, and they wrote the date, then and the weekly study time, then autonomous study time and materials, and the debate scores. They do 2 rounds of micro debate. When they win 2 times, and they get 3 points. Win 1 time, get 2 points. No winning, and still get 1 point. Then self-evaluation of their class performance. And this is the Likert scale of 5. And 5 is well done. And also feedback and reflections. Now, and the class consists of 3 main activities. And each textbook unit was taught in the A class and B class structure. In A class, we focus on developing comprehension, vocabulary, building, and in B class, students develop their speaking ability and debate strategies with mind map and engage in English language micro debate. In every class, at the beginning and at the end of the class, they completed their self-evaluation worksheet. So the micro debate and use the advanced English that challenges the student to enable them to produce this advanced English in debate. Comprehension was supported at lexical, linguistic, and conceptual levels. And the topics are about practical issue from online or in-store shopping and using plastic bags and paper bags and dubbing or subtitling in the movie. Now, and we are discussing the results.
Thank you, Yoshie. Okay, so, sorry. These are the results. Here is a learning autonomy. And you can see it goes up over time from time 1 to time 2 to time 3. Here you see self-efficacy, the sense that they are competent at what they're doing. And that goes up from time 1 to time 2 to time 3. And here's willingness to communicate. This is measured on percentages so they can be compared. Okay, next we found that as learner autonomy increased, so did willingness to communicate. There was a positive correlation between the 2 variables. So that's research question 1. Research question 2, does self-efficacy contribute to willingness to communicate? We found that it does. As self-efficacy increased, so did willingness to communicate. And again, there was a positive linear relationship between the 2. Okay, the third research questions, do preferences for a medium of instruction influence their willingness to communicate? This was interesting. This is a much more complex set of variables, but we found that only 2 factors, because this was built on a factor analysis, only 2 factors were significantly related at time 1. They were emotions and review. Students wanted Japanese support for emotions, and they wanted Japanese support for review. But by time 2 and time 3, that significant relationship was gone. Okay, discussion. Does learner autonomy contribute to willingness to communicate? Yes, it does. This supports findings, similar findings by Carson and Ochi. That paper is in press at this moment. As students learn the benefits of learner autonomy, even with studying unrelated material, their willingness to speak in class increases. Research question 2, does self-efficacy contribute to willingness to communicate? Yes, it does. Contrary to previous findings, in another paper we wrote, students' self-efficacy maintained its statistically positive relationship with willingness to communicate throughout the course. Research question 3, do preferences for medium of instruction influence their willingness to communicate? No. At first, 2 of the 7 factors were correlated, but by the second time 2, all significant correlations had vanished, and none of them returned by time 3. So what that suggests is with sufficient language support of difficult English, student preferences for Japanese support in class decreased. This is a good thing. Okay, pedagogical suggestions. Micro debates are related to increased willingness to communicate. Teachers can develop learner autonomy and self-efficacy strategies with their students in class. Learner autonomy materials chosen by students out of class contributes to self-efficacy of in-class work, and that was a surprise. Number 4, linguistic scaffolding as homework and reviewed as pair work can contribute to willingness to communicate. Self-assessment sheets support learner autonomy and self-efficacy, and learner autonomy and self-efficacy contribute to willingness to communicate and ultimately language learning. Theoretical implications. Debate challenges students to outperform their perceived limitations. And this is possible if there is language scaffolding to reduce anxiety, and language weaknesses are eased by using this scaffolding, which enhances self-efficacy. Learner autonomy strategies are trainable and can contribute to willingness to communicate. Improving confidence can be tracked and reinforced with self-assessment sheets. Self-assessment supports learning autonomy, self-efficacy, and willingness to communicate. Now, in the future, this study was limited by a small student sample. There are only 100 students and only 2 teachers, one each of Japanese and non-Japanese. So in the future, we would hope for a larger student sample and more teachers. And if we got a larger sample, then we could do structural equation modeling of the data, which requires about 300 participants to be a good study. And also, we would like to look at the qualitative analysis of the self-evaluation worksheets, because as you might recall, there were many comments on the one side. We'd like to know what the students had to say about their performance in class and at home. We want to know why students responded as they did. In conclusion, learner autonomy positively correlated with willingness to communicate. As one went up, so did the other. Self-efficacy positively correlated with willingness to communicate. Again, as one went up, the other did as well. Medium of instruction was negatively correlated with willingness to communicate. This indicates a connection with anxiety. This disappeared over time. And this suggests that needs for students' comprehension support were met. Finally, students who were quiet at the beginning of the course were enjoying noisy debates by the end of course. And this is a very good sign that they're learning English. Thank you for listening. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Dr. Carson and Dr. Ochi. I would like to invite everybody to unmute their mics and offer a round of applause for this wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. So question time. Would you please write your questions in the chat box so that the doctors can read and answer your questions? Oh, we will be extending this session for another 5 to 10 minutes. So please feel free to write your questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Our apologies for the delay.
If you'd like to ask or speak your questions, that's okay.
Please unmute yourselves and ask a question.
Yeah, actually, if I could ask, I'm sorry if I missed this, but I guess the idea was that the so-called native speaker teacher and would teach in English, the JT would teach in Japanese. That's where the language consideration came in, and I wonder if was there consideration given to?
My partner would like to answer that one.
Okay, and I was just wondering whether there's consideration to a native.
Let's deal with one question at a time.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
In the classroom, and I try to use in English and the explanation, but as for the comprehension of the textbook unit, and the student is supposed to translate it into Japanese. It is just a base for the comprehension. But other than that, try to use English and for the debate and for the minor presentation.
Okay, thank you. So was there kind of consideration given to the, I guess, capacity for, or the potential for, Japanese support regardless of the, teacher's first language, where a native speaker teacher could also support using.
Well, I was one of the teachers, and my Japanese is not that great. So in my case, I asked them to translate at home and in pairs, and if they needed help, they could talk to each other. And they often did their translation work together outside of class as a group. And then when they came back to class, I asked them to share the translations in case somebody else didn't or wasn't able to translate. Okay. So that's what they did. And I tried to focus on English itself as much as possible in class, and definitely in debates.
I am so sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Carson. It looks like there is another session right after this, and I'm afraid we're going to have to cut this question session short. Okay. Again, our sincere apologies for the delay, but we are glad that you were able to finish your presentation as scheduled. So I'm sorry, everyone. The next presenter will be arriving very soon. Thank you so much. If you'd like to discuss a little bit more, please do go to the Hangouts area and talk a little bit more about this very interesting presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll be in Hangouts.
Maybe see you in a Hangout. Okay. Thank you.